All right. I think we'll get going. It looks like there's still a few people joining, but that's okay. We'll give them an opportunity to do that. So, thank you everyone for joining. We have a lot of people registered for this webinar, which is just fantastic. Looking down the names, I see some names I know and some names I don't. So I assume there's some Preseem customers here. Some people that maybe know a bit about Preseem, some that maybe don't know too much about Preseem at all. So we're going to talk a little bit about Preseem at kind of a high level and what we're trying to do, but we're not really going to try to cover everything that we do today. We're really going to focus on the fiber side of things. So, all right, well, we'll get going. So agenda for today, just a little bit of logistics here. On the right-hand side, you can see that there's a chat kind of system built into BigMarker. If you have any questions, drop them in either the Q&A tab or the chat tab, and we'll queue those up probably mostly for the end of the presentation. Maybe we'll do a couple as we go through the session as well. And if you do put them on the chat tab, if they disappear, it's because we've moved them over to the Q&A tab. So you don't have to say it again, just kind of go look over there. And again, we'll address them as we go through everything. There's also on the resources up at the top, there's a chat and there's Q&A and there's handouts. We put a small one-pager in there that talks a little bit about some of Preseem's fiber features that we're going to talk about later. Feel free to grab that or at the end or the beginning or wherever makes sense. All right, so today I'm going to be introducing Preseem at a high level. Again, not going too deep in everything we do, but talk a little bit about the problems that we're trying to solve. My name's Dan Siemon. I'm CPO and co-founder, and Scott's with us as well, and Scott's CTO and co-founder. He's going to do more of a deep dive demo into the fiber stuff that we're launching today. Of course, we're also, to celebrate launching the fiber features, we're giving away an OLT today. This is probably unsurprisingly one of the models that we support in this initial release. I'm sure that's not surprise to anybody. Post-webinar, we'll process the list of everyone that's on, and the kind of conditions around this are working for an ISP and attending the webinar. So it'll take us a day or two to post-process and then randomly select a winner from there. So excited for this and excited to see how people make use of that in the future. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Preseem at a high level. Many people here probably know us on the quality of experience side, as that's really kind of been our focus for a long time, and that is measuring the quality of experience for subscribers, tying that back to the topology, so what areas of the networks need to be improved and what areas are delivering a poor experience, and also the optimization side, primarily around optimizing traffic for fairness and latency to deliver a good experience even when the network's under load. And that's still a really important part of what we do. And we have some really cool new stuff that we're working on there that we'll talk about in another webinar. But it's not all that we do. In fact, we've been we spent maybe mostly probably the last couple of years building a platform that lets us model the whole access network from across vendors, across access technologies, to try to provide a layer of management across vendors so that operators can more efficiently manage a multi-vendor, multi-access network. This is something that we're seeing across our customer base. It extends from maybe your kind of traditional fixed wireless and adding Tirana, or you're doing fiber in some other part of the network. But it just generally seems to be a trend that many ISPs are becoming multi-access on some level or another, and that brings a bunch of complexities. So that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about, and the major problem that we're trying to solve on a large scale today. So let's talk a little bit about where that complexity comes from. So if you start off as an ISP, you probably have one vendor. Say, let's take in this example here, a fixed wireless, and you have a single vendor, you have a single set of tools, and the whole company can use that from support to provisioning to kind of network troubleshooting. And it may be a little bit overcomplicated for support, but it's okay because there's kind of one set of tools, one application to train, one access technology to train across the organization. But then inevitably you get another vendor at play. So maybe the new hot AP comes out and you want to bring another vendor into your network. And all of a sudden things get a lot more complicated, where you need to jump between systems to get a big picture of the whole access network. Or the support team needs to go to multiple systems to help a customer when they call in. Provisioning is jump around between systems, or else have software expertise to do the provisioning across multiple vendors. And this adds a lot of complexity. Take this even farther to the example at the bottom, where you have, say, fixed wireless, fiber, and cable. And there are people on the call here today that have cable networks as well. And the complexity gets really high. It can get to the point where it's almost unmanageable with the vendor tools, just in terms of having to train people on all these different access technologies, all these different applications. And even sometimes things that look kind of the same actually aren't the same. Maybe it's called the same thing, but they don't mean the same thing. And there's no one big picture of the overall access network. To try to put a little bit of numbers around this in terms of complexity, don't read too much into the formula here or the specific numbers, but this is obviously a dramatically simplified model. But if we think about kind of 1 point of complexity for each access technology the organization needs to know, 1 point of complexity for each vendor they need to know, and then the vendor integration side a point as well. And that might be software chops to integrate it, or it might be having to manually provision subscribers across multiple vendors. You get a kind of simple formula here, a score of 3. That jumps up pretty quick once you've added multiple vendors to the network. Again, and this is very common. Pretty much every customer I believe that we work with that's been around for a while has at least 2 access point vendors in their network, if not more. And then, of course, going farther, that kind of grows exponentially once you start adding other access technologies to the mix. And again, don't get too much detail on the 3, 7, 15 thing. Different organizations will weight them differently. Maybe you've got good software skills, the integration's not scary, but the support training side is, it's different for everybody. But in general, the complexity gets higher and higher with more access technologies and more vendors. But there's lots of reasons why ISPs want to be multi-vendor. And as I mentioned earlier, once you end up becoming a hybrid network, it's almost by definition that you're a multi-vendor network. I'm not aware of any vendor that is the best of breed OLT provider and the best of breed access point provider. I don't think that exists, and probably it will never exist. But multi-vendor is really a good thing. Like if you think about being successful in ISP, having the flexibility to do new things and bring new vendors in, and things just change over time. The market changes what the best product is. And we can see what happens here with the big guys. Comcast has Cable Labs. They use that to drive standards across all the vendors so that they have certain benefits we'll talk about in a second. And on the mobile side, the same thing happens, where they've got the 3GPP standards to drive this so they can have commonality across all of their various parts of their network. For the people that we're interested in helping, which is regional internet providers, we don't have access to large standard organizations to force things through, unfortunately, like the very large providers do. But the benefits that we get out of being multi-vendor are very real. Being able to reduce your training costs. New support person comes on, you don't have to train them about all the different platforms. Same, of course, for anybody that's managing the access network at a whole. Of course, there's still going to be interactions there with vendor tools for configuration and things like that, but day-to-day operations is more what I'm talking about. So you're going to reduce the training and the onboarding time for new people. Maybe if you do outsourced support, you don't have to worry about whether those outsourced companies know about every single AP that you support in your network and whether they can understand it well enough to do their job. You can be much more effective in reactive and proactive operations as well. You think about on the reactive side, not having to jump between systems to support a customer and understand, are they getting a good experience? Is the underlying access network actually working properly? Being able to answer that quickly is a big part of the customer experience. And then on the proactive side, if there's no one common view of the network, how do you choose where to pick your battles? Like, how do you know this is the area of the network that needs to be, has capacity problems, or these are the set of, we'll talk about earlier, the set of pawns across the whole network, across all the vendors that have high load on them. And those are the ones we maybe need to split in the future, for example. Really need one big picture to operate that efficiently. Of course, why the big guys do a lot of the standardization is around their negotiating power with their vendors. So that figures into it too. But even maybe more importantly for regional ISPs is the ability to use the right tool for the right job. In some cases, fixed wireless is the right tool. In some cases, fiber might be the right tool. Maybe it's 6 gigahertz, maybe it's Tirana, but being able to use the right tool in the right place, I think is really important. And that agility is something that regional providers have that the big guys don't, right? Like they're going to stick with their big standards and they're just going to kind of do one thing and repeat it forever, whether it's the right solution or not, sort of. But smaller providers can leverage their smaller size to be more flexible and I think deliver better service than you could trying to be universally applicable everywhere. So that's really the problem that what we've been trying to work on for the last year or two is model the underlying access network and be able to provide that one view across everything. Again, overly simplified picture, but being able to normalize all of the metrics for fixed wireless access network, for the fiber network, cable in the future probably. Really haven't done much on that side yet. But being able to give that kind of common interface across these systems so the organization can scale, grow faster, and be more nimble with the technologies that are used to serve their customers. So for those of you who are new to Preseem, just very briefly, we have 3 kind of main components in our architecture. The one is the Preseem Cloud. That's where the app lives, authentication, all the databases, the time series, data analysis, all that good stuff. We also have the Preseem Element, which are inline element, we call it, which is where traffic flows through the box. We do the traffic optimization. We understand the quality of experience. And the third component, which is maybe a little less known, is the Preseem Polar, which reaches out to the whole network to extract information from the access network and helps us build a topology, which I'll talk about in a second. So these three pieces together form, there's obviously pieces inside of each of these, but are the bulk of the overall architecture. And with those three systems, we're able to deliver benefits for the end subscribers, for access network operations, core network operations, support, and the sales and marketing teams as well, which is particularly interesting. But what people may not know is it's not strictly necessary that the inline traffic is in play here. A bunch of what we're going to show when Scott jumps into the fiber demo in a few minutes, that is driven based on our model of the network and the polar. Of course, it's a situation where like 1 + 1 is 3, where if you have the experience metrics and you have the polled metrics together, there's a lot of value there, but it's actually not strictly necessary. And again, a lot of what you're going to see can be powered just with the polar integrated into your network, extracting the information that we need, and then can be augmented with the quality of experience inline metric side later. Another thing that we spend a lot of time on, which I think is relatively unique, is how much effort we put into this automatic access network discovery. This is something that is kind of under the hood, that it's not always easy to talk about because you kind of don't know you need it until you need it, sort of thing. But it allows us with a little bit of priming information to figure out where subscribers are in the network, what IP addresses they have, which subscribers are on which ONTs are on which PONs are on which OLTs, same for fixed wireless. And the real benefit here is we can get going with a lot less information than you might otherwise have to provision into a system because we can reach out and learn a lot of it. The other thing that we've seen more recently is for some of our larger customers, they're able to use our data as sort of a ground truth of what's happening in the network. I think we probably all had the experience where you have a system where you're inputting stuff over years, but if it's not validated against the network afterwards, it's really, kind of bit rots, right? Like it might have been accurate 6 months ago or a year ago, but it's not accurate anymore. So we're seeing a lot of larger customers leverage this discovered data to compare against their other systems and audit it. And that kind of becomes a really positive feedback loop as well, which is, I think, maybe something that we really didn't expect to happen when we started building that. And lastly, before we jump over to the demo, our architecture, as I mentioned, is kind of hybrid cloud and on-prem. The cloud side allows us to move fast. We maintain all the data. We look after the databases, the reliability, the backups, all that hard stuff. And we can move really fast there. I mean, we will sometimes push many updates to the app every day. That's just something that happens, constantly, and people don't even need to know that happens. But of course, in a service provider context, there's certain things that need to be in the service provider. You can't move traffic for customers, up to the cloud and back. So of course, the inline box has to be there. You generally don't want to expose your management network to being pulled from the internet. So of course, it makes sense for the polar to be in the network as well. But we think this architecture really gives us the benefits of both, where we can move as quick as possible, deliver new features as quick as possible on the cloud side, but yet have the on-prem capabilities that are necessary to operate in a service provider network. So that's a brief overview of Preseem. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Scott to dive a little bit into the fiber stuff that we built.
Oh, you might want to go back. Okay. Yeah, so I've got a few slides in a demo, and we decided to pre-record this part as it's mostly me doing a live demo. And my experience of demoing products, it's Murphy's Law. Sometimes things go badly. So we cheated a bit and recorded this yesterday. We're going to play it now, and we'll be back to wrap things up afterwards. If you want to ask questions while the video is playing, Dan and I will be answering them in real time in the chat and Q&A panels on your screen. Enjoy. To be introducing our fiber support, which is now available. Today I'll be taking you through a few of the use cases, talking about the benefits of using Preseem with your fiber network, showing you some demos, and getting into the details of which fiber vendors we support and how to get started. First, we're simplifying the support process for your help desk technicians. When they search for a customer in Preseem, they'll immediately find that subscriber's details, regardless of whether the subscriber is on a fixed wireless, fiber, or other type of access network. For fixed wireless and fiber customers, Preseem puts the important data right in front of them to guide the troubleshooting process, such as light levels and the Ethernet port status of the ONT. This makes it easy to triage and in some case resolve incoming issues without needing your CSRs to be trained on vendor-specific tools. I'm going to demonstrate what this looks like in Preseem. One of our customers has generously let us show this for demonstration purposes, so this is real data you'll be seeing today from an active Preseem deployment. This shows a search for a customer account based on their name. This might be done by a customer support rep handling an incoming call, for example. Once a correct account is found, you can drill into it to get a detailed view of the account and any active internet services on that account. So I'm going to drill into a wireless subscriber here. Now we can see that this subscriber seems to be capped at around 30 megabits, and we have some high latency spikes showing up for him. So let's look at what services he has. He has one wireless 25 by 10 service, which is actually capped at about 28 megabits. So that's about right, given what we saw. We're going to drill to the service, and we see that this is a wireless customer. There are some helpful charts here showing whether he's achieving his plan speed, which he is, what quality of experience he's experiencing. There are some latency spikes, so there could be some issues. And there's a link to this customer's record in the billing system as well. So if I click this link right here, and I was authenticated to the PowerCode instance, that customer's account would come up in a new tab in PowerCode for convenience. It's also a link to his CPE radio device right here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on that to get some more information. Now this webinar is about fiber, but I do want to quickly show the wireless CPE view to demonstrate how Preseem can be helpful in a hybrid fiber and wireless network. So this is the CPE radio of the service we were just looking at. You can see there's a business value score here, there's an RF score here, and those look pretty good. However, there do seem to be some issues with the access point, and so that may be affecting this user's experience. So if this is a support call being handled, that may be time to do an escalation to the wireless network team to investigate further. So having this information at their fingertips can help guide the CSR to this conclusion and make the call handling time much shorter. Now to current Preseem users, this is nothing new. So let's drill into a fiber service next. So I'm going to go back to the accounts list. And I'm going to do another search. And this time I'm going to pick a fiber subscriber. Now here we have a customer who obviously has a problem. Latency for this account is showing that his quality of experience is probably really terrible. He's getting about 10 megabits, and it looks like there's something capping that there. So let's drill into the service. He's got a fiber 50 by 50 service. And so you can see the same thing here a little more clearly. Here's what his rate should be able to hit this green line here. He's not even coming close to it. We've got some latency problems here. So what we're going to do is similar to what we did for the wireless example. We're going to drill into the customer's CPE device, which in this case is an ONT in the customer's home, to get more information. So here is a new screen in Preseem's new fiber views. This is the ONT details view for that service. And there are a few performance metrics on this view that can be useful for troubleshooting a customer who calls in. You can see that the ONT is online. It's been online for 47 days, so it's stable. There's not a stability issue here. Its light levels are within a good range for the optics being used. So these are all good things to check when you're triaging a customer call. Now, we also show the Ethernet port status up and the Ethernet port speed, and there is where we have a problem, which Preseem calls out here by coloring the port speed orange. This customer probably has a very old home router, which is only negotiating a 10 megabit speed to the ONT. So at this point, The CSR knows what the problem is. They probably have a procedure for how to solve that, and they can probably solve it without further escalation. So that was a demonstration of some of the paths a support rep might take through Preseem. Just a recap of some of the benefits Preseem can offer your support teams. Reduced call times and time to root cause by making it easy to find the important KPIs such as light levels and Ethernet port speeds entirely within Preseem without needing to go to any other tools. This can make it much less expensive to onboard and train new support staff. They only need to be trained on Preseem. They don't even need to have login access to the vendor-specific tools, and especially to the OLTs and radios in the network. This is also better for security, since it reduces the number of people who have access to credentials used for critical network infrastructure. For the operations team, Preseem brings key metrics together from across different vendor platforms and also from Preseem's inline QoE metrics. The new fiber views make it easy to identify potential problems on PONs and ONTs to be able to fix issues proactively and prioritize network improvements. Having all of these metrics together also makes it easier to investigate issues escalated from the support team and figure out whether the root cause is in the fiber plant, customer premises, or in the backhaul network. So I'm going to demonstrate some of these use cases. And we're going to start with one of the new views, the PONs view. So here's a view of all the PONs in the network. You can see this network has a mix of Ubiquiti and Adtran. And we're just going to sort by the downstream throughput per PON. And you can use this to find PONs that are approaching their maximum capacity. So you can plan for this by splitting a PON or upgrading some of the customers on that PON to XGS PON, maybe by using a combo PON transceiver or a WDM filter device. So we'll drill into one of these. And here we've got some basic metrics, and we can also go to the metrics view here. I'll stick to this one for now. So Preseem keeps metrics for 2 years, so you can look at the metrics views to understand how utilization on a PON is trending and predict which PONs are going to run into their capacity limits and how much time you have to address this. So we can go back a little bit further and just kind of see a long-term trend. We don't have a lot of data in history for this one. So next, let's have a look at the ONTs view. You can use this ONTs list to find issues in the fiber plant with bad connections or splices, as well as PONs approaching maximum attenuation for some set of ONTs. Sorting all ONTs by the received light levels is a good way to prioritize PONs and ONTs to investigate for proactive maintenance, such as fixing bad splices and cleaning connectors to prevent future outages. So I'm going to pick one of these to drill into. And again, what we have here is a convenient historical graph of the light levels showing the actual received power and where the min and max acceptable received power for those optics are. And if we go to the metrics, again, we can see these over a long period of time. So if you had a significant change that had been made to the network that had affected these ONT views, you'd see a step function here where the received power gets better or gets worse, and you can correlate that to some maintenance that was done in the network and go and correct the problem. So now I'm going to go back to the ONT view, and I'm going to sort by another metric, the Ethernet port speed. So you can sort the ONTs by the port speed to find customers with old Wi-Fi routers that are not gigabit Ethernet capable. These are probably causing other QoE issues as well, such as unachievable speed tests and low quality Wi-Fi performance. You can use this to generate a call list for your sales team to offer a managed router, and then that can be a win for revenue as well as for customer satisfaction. Preseem can also be used to isolate the root cause of QoE problems. So we're going to take a look at some QoE metrics for an OLT. So this one here I've chosen is Ubiquity OLT. And I'm going to go into the experience metrics here. Now we're going to take a look at some of the QoE metrics from the Preseem appliance. So you can see two latency charts here. The one on the left is for the OLT in aggregate, and the one on the right shows each pawn all on the graphed on the same chart. And this is measuring end-to-end latency between the Preseem appliance and the end user device inside the customer premises. So this is latency as perceived by the customer. And this is what Preseem uses for many of our QoE metrics. You can see here that all the pawns are in a pretty tight band between about 10 and 40 milliseconds. And any variance seems to affect all pawns equally. So you can see there's some peak time effects where all of the pawns go up together. So what that is telling you is there may be some slight buffering upstream from the OLT in the backhaul network, for example, but these are good latency numbers and really nothing we should be concerned about. So let's drill down to one of the pawns to take a closer look at it. Just sort by the number of ONTs and take the busiest pawn by ONTs. And this time we'll go back to the experience charts. So this time the chart on the left shows the pawn port, and the chart on the right shows the IP address of each subscriber that's transiting that pawn port. And you can see there's a few outliers here on the customer side, a few spikes that go up to 200 for certain subscribers. And if you were investigating a speed complaints from one of these customers, you might use this chart to conclude that the latency problem, while measurable by Preseem, is likely a problem in the customer's home and not in the access network, since you don't have any obvious correlation to the aggregate latency for the pawn, and there's no obvious patterns where all of the IPs on that pawn are following the same pattern. So that was a demonstration of some of the tools Preseem provides for a fiber operations team. We're making it easy to proactively identify problems in the fiber network, such as congested pawns, bad fiber links, problems further upstream, such as overloaded backhauls, and problems inside the customer premises, such as poor Wi-Fi coverage. Now, all of these features, as we've explained, are vendor agnostic. You may have multiple fiber vendors in your network, and Preseem provides a single view that normalizes the different metrics and KPIs across vendors. This gives you the flexibility to choose the best vendor for the job without worrying about the extra management and support costs associated with having a multi-vendor network. So a few examples to explain what I mean by deployment agility. So one example, let's say you're an ISP that is an all Calyx shop and wants to go into a new town which only has 50 homes. Currently, you would be forced to buy an expensive Calyx OLT for the town, which may have a longer ROI and higher ongoing costs such as maintenance or licensing. Now you might consider a smaller, lower cost device for this town, such as a Ubiquity OLT, but this also weakens the business case because the management and support costs associated with having a second vendor are steep. With Preseem, you can buy the best OLT for the job. Your support team lives in Preseem, so it doesn't matter to them that there are two vendors. Preseem can do the subscriber plan enforcement, so they don't need a new integration from their billing system to the new vendor. And Preseem discovers the subscriber topology, and it doesn't need to be provisioned with it. Another example, an ISP that is a 100% one fiber vendor plans to build fiber in a new town, but that vendor has inventory problems or maybe has increased the price significantly. Without Preseem, you might feel locked into your vendor. The cost of switching vendors touches too many parts of your company. But with Preseem, you have the flexibility to switch to a new vendor without building new integrations, retraining the support team, and changing day-to-day network operations. This can also give you negotiating power with your vendors if they are trying to raise the price on you. One more example. A WISP is just starting their first fiber deployment in a small town. Without Preseem, choosing the OLT vendor can be a risky choice because it's likely to become a permanent decision since you're going to integrate that OLT vendor with your network and your billing systems. You'll train your support team on how to support fiber generally and also with the specific details of your chosen fiber platform, and you'll provide them with access to the fiber platform to all your technical staff. But with Preseem, you can choose an OLT vendor knowing that this isn't a permanent decision. Preseem gives you the flexibility to choose another OLT for the next deployment. You train the support team on the general fiber concepts, such as how to check the light levels, but they still do their day-to-day work inside Preseem, where everything looks the same as their current experience with their fixed wireless subscribers. So what fiber vendors is Preseem supporting? In our initial release, we'll support the Adtran TA5000 series of OLTs, the Calix E7 series, and all Ubiquiti fiber platforms. Next on our current roadmap is BDCom, the Adtran SDX6000 series, and Nokia. We're building out this roadmap based on customer feedback, so if you have another vendor you haven't seen here, we'd really like to know about it. Please reach out to us and let us know what you're looking for.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So that is a brief overview of kind of what we're trying to do on the multi-vendor, multi-access front with some specifics on the fiber side. For those of you that are customers or maybe know a little bit more about Preseem, the multi-vendor aspect on the fixed wireless side is something we've had for a while when we introduced the new access point views, CPU radio views, the service account and package and all that stuff in the last little while. And now this fiber side finally kind of connects the dots, bringing the two things together. So we're pretty excited about it. So there's been a lot of questions on the side. I think we probably won't repeat the ones that have already been, all of the ones anyway, that have been answered. You can go over to QA and you can go to answered. Maybe I'll just call out a couple though. And Scott, maybe you have a couple that are worth just calling out as well. There's a question about, is this part of base Preseem? Yes, it is. Everything we've shown here is part of base Preseem. We do have a fixed wireless plus add-on, which has some analytic features that help to kind of scale and grow a fixed wireless network. But none of the fiber stuff we showed there is related to that at all. So all in base Preseem. Interesting questions about Ubiquiti ONTs in bridge mode. I hadn't thought about that. Scott, maybe you want to touch on that for a second?
Yeah, I guess in general, a lot of people are used to how our wireless stuff works, so we didn't really call it technical details too much here, but we're mapping things from the network, and all we need to correlate that with the customer record is some network coordinate in the customer record that we can use to identify the ONT. So that could be the MAC address of the ONT, the serial number of the ONT. As long as you've got that in the billing system associated with the customer service, then our poller can figure everything else out, and you'll see everything all together in Preseem. The IP address is assigned to that customer, who they are, which ONT they're assigned to, and all the things in the demo.
Mm-hmm. Another question just came in about Chinese vendors like Huawei and TP-Link. Definitely, we will do more vendors over time. So far, we prioritize the ones that customers have asked for. But if this is a particular vendor that's interesting for you, then please let us know. It will definitely influence our roadmap. Question about the inline appliance side, passing big plans through. So two things there. So I'm not sure about that specific detail. I mentioned at the start about the quality of experience shaping side being something that's still a big part of what we do, not what we're going to talk about today. But just to lean a little bit into that, there's some pretty major changes coming in the relatively near future on the inline device side as well. That will be much higher performance and a lot of other cool things that we're doing too. So if you did have any problems with really large plans, that were probably what was happening was maybe like individual cores were getting overloaded. If there was too many subscribers kind of balanced to a core, for example, that will go away relatively soon. It's something we've been working on for quite a while, and it's pretty high priority. It's a lot of work, but it's really cool, and I'm going to be excited to do another one of these at some point in the future just to show what's happening there. But as also mentioned, that most of what Scott showed today actually doesn't involve traffic flowing through the inline box anyway. It's a lot of it's pulled. It's just the views that have the experience metrics shown at the same time as the pulled metrics.
Right. So for anyone who wants to get started with this, it's really easy. If you don't already have Preseem, you don't need to put an appliance in your network to get started. It adds some benefits, but you can fully get going with just spinning up a VM. We help you install the puller on it, and then get you going. It's a couple hours probably to see data.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to kind of for what's on the slide there. Yeah, if you're an existing customer, just reach out to support. We'll be happy to work with you to get the OLTs integrated in the sense, essentially authentication, so that we're able to get the information we need. And if you're new to Preseem, there's a demo link here. Please feel to reach out on the website. Someone can give you a more complete demo that touches all the things we do, not just the fiber stuff today, but we're certainly happy to get going there. And again, you can start very quickly with a VM and some integration on the network side versus having to make traffic changes at the start.
Yeah. So someone asked for supporting Cambium fiber. So like Dan said, we've got a list. It was shown actually in the video, a list of things that are next in the queue, we think, to support, and it's going to be based on customer demand. So if you have Cambium fiber in your network and you want us to support it, let us know. We haven't, to be honest, seen a lot of it out there yet, but if it's a popular choice, then yeah, absolutely. They have SNMP support, so that's probably the approach we take to support it.
All right, so we are at 40 minutes, which is pretty good time. Any other questions anyone would like to drop in there before we call it a meeting? All right. If there's anything, I mean, obviously the OLT roadmap is certainly up for influence by customers, but even features, like if there's anything that you think we can add that would make your life easier, make your easier to manage the fiber network, or even the access network in general, please let us know. We obviously can't build everything, but we really like to know what problems you have and how we can solve them. Scott, maybe the next, I don't know, we could just talk for a second, give people a chance, questions, a couple of next things that we're going to do. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of questions on the Polar, so maybe some confusion over whether that is the same as Preseem appliance or not. So in some cases, especially at smaller customers, we run the Polar right on the Preseem appliance. So you may not even actually know it's there, but it is. We run the Polar on all Preseem deployments. So if it's already running on your Preseem deployment, on your Preseem appliance, it's the same thing for fiber. It's the same Polar, the same instance of the Polar. It just starts pulling the fiber elements as well.
And the distinction there is once we get past a certain point, the Polar's load, we prefer it to be on a VM, so it's not running on the same box that's processing packets. But in smaller deployments, it's fine.
Dan, do you want to address that billing question?
Yeah, so question about billing. So if you have one customer currently on wireless and we update the neighborhood to fiber, but they don't want to keep the wireless link as a backup. Oh, but they want to keep the wireless link as a backup. I'm not sure that we've really thought about that use case, to be honest. That people would want to have two services into their house as a very popular thing. Maybe that's something you could reach out to us about and we can talk about. I don't think, I'm not aware of being asked before what happens if we keep the wireless at the same time. So we have not really thought about that yet. I'm sure we can figure something out. That does seem to be a particularly interesting use case that wouldn't make sense to double charge for. So the bigger problem will be how do we actually measure it? But
showing pawn errors, absolutely. We're gonna get to that. It's not in the initial release, but that's high on the list.
Yeah, things like FAC errors, bit drops, bit errors, all that kind of stuff is kind of the next area that we want to go to. Yep. All right. What else do we have for questions? Comment on being able to use the WDM with XGS PON and PON. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Additional cost. It's per sub. The same, but it won't be like double counted for a customer. That's generally customers aren't going to be a fiber customer and a fixed wireless customer at the same time. And then in cases where there is no inline traffic, then talk to us about that as well. Ideally, I think that a lot of the value comes when both are present, but again, it's not strictly necessary. All right. Well, another one here. Oh, Matt, all of our business customers have wireless and fiber. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Good. That's the great thing about meetings like this, where we can get feedback on things that we maybe didn't consider completely ahead of time. So we'll have to think a bit about what the structure is in cases where there's a wireless backup link.
Question about the REST API. So we've added one new endpoint to the REST API just so you can tell us about the OLTs that we need to pull. And right now we don't have a REST API to get the details of ONTs out the way we do for wireless, but that will be coming at some point in the future.
Maybe just thought of something as well, Casey, for your question about the bigger plans and traffic. There's actually some tweaking that can be done targeting for larger plans as well, which is in the existing software. There's some tuning there that can go on to optimize for particular bandwidths, and that might just need to be cranked up a little bit for larger plans as well. Didn't think of that earlier. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was pretty great attendance. Lots of great questions. I'll do one last. How far away is shipping by PON port? Good question. So depends on the size. So we're going to likely tie some of that back to some of the bigger data plane work that we're doing, just to make sure that we have the headroom to make sure that that's going to work with like really big PON ports and busy PON ports. We may roll out an earlier version of it in a shorter time period on the existing data plane, but it's definitely something that we think is going to have value and we want to get there, but it's not right today. Another question related to the Splinks licensing. They charge a license for both services. Yeah, that one we maybe just, it sounds kind of specific to Splinks. We'll probably best just to take that offline and we can discuss that with your account manager, just to understand what's happening, what the details are. I don't want to say the wrong thing right now.
It's kind of the same wireless backup for fiber. How do we charge for that? Mm-hmm. It's a good question for us to take away.
Another question on the Polar. Is there a way to know when it's time to move the Polar to a VM? Generally, I'd like to say often our team is going to catch that if we see a Polar or an inline box is really busy. I think what's the current guidelines where we recommend a VM, Scott? It's after, I forget what it is. It's after a couple thousand subscribers or something like that. We generally would prefer that it's on a VM just to isolate the impact, but it really depends almost as much on how many devices are being pulled as it does subscribers. So there's a little bit of play in those exact numbers. If you have any concern at all, just use the chat in the app and the support team will investigate and suggest whether it's something you should be looking at or not. All right. So a couple other things here. I think some of these are maybe getting a little bit detailed. Maybe we should take those into support issues. The question about multiple services getting different rates. Yeah, that sounds like something when you did. I need to understand exactly what's happening there to be able to answer that. I don't think I have the context to do that right now.
Yeah, it certainly shouldn't be happening. So there's a problem that we need to help you solve for that.
Yeah, it could be an integration. Multiple services with similar IDs or something. But yeah, hard to answer without digging a little bit more, but please reach out. Awesome. Yeah, we will send out the recording of the whole webinar as well. It'll get posted in app where all customers can obviously get it, but it'll be posted sent to all registrants of the webinar as well. So we'll definitely get that out. Probably might be early next week before that happens. Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Lots of people here. Lots of people stayed right to the end. Thank you very much for your time. I hope it was interesting and useful. And we would love your comments and feedback. Good, bad, ugly. It helps us make things better. So thank you very much for your time.